So, welcome to 3 podcast formats that can enhance your brand credibility for business as a beginner or professional podcaster. And this is with Majesty, AliNICOLE, and that is me and the fabulous Brenda, Lynn. Looking forward to bringing this experience to you during this time. Brenda, Lynn, thank you so much for being here with me.
Thanks for the invite. It's always nice to co-host these with you.
Oh, definitely. And I'm excited about this, particular focus here because you and I have recently provided 3 entry-level products for these particular formats that we're going to be discussing today. And I think that it's very important for those who are really embarking on the podcast path to make sure that you are setting up the right foundation, setting and laying the right foundation for success. And even those of you who have been in podcasting for quite some time, and maybe you've had some success or maybe you haven't, these particular formats definitely you should consider that can help take what you do to the next level. So Brenda, Lynn, are you ready to jump in and talk about this?
I am. The other thing that I'll just add to what you said there is even if you've been in podcasting for a while and successfully, always keep in mind that the world is changing.
Yes, absolutely.
What worked even last month doesn't necessarily work this month.
You are absolutely
always have to stay right on top of every new possibility and potential that's out there.
You are absolutely right. I'm so glad you said that because now you're giving me something I definitely want to speak to. Just in terms of
kind of how we work.
Yes, it is,
isn't it, AliNICOLE?
It really is, yes. In terms of the relevance of timing and how you do certain things, because as you mentioned, what worked at one point may not work at another point. We think about technology. Technology is consistently moving rapidly, and there's a new iPhone or iPad out, every other month. They use one, and so exponentially things are accelerating. And sometimes you have to apply certain principles at certain times, even though there are certain fundamentals that are timeless, but you have to also be mindful when and how you apply those so that they can have effectiveness. So
it's like the attention span of people, because of the rapid change in our world, the attention span is getting shorter and shorter and shorter. So what you might be able to have done in an hour podcast before, you might have 15 minutes of attention to get your message across. So it's just, and then doing the same thing over and over and over again. That used to work for people. Now people are looking like, okay, been there, done that. Now give me a new format, give me something new, give me something different.
Yeah, you have to have diversity. Yeah, absolutely. You have to diversify. So what we're going to do now, and then we'll continue to have conversation, is talk about the 3 formats. And so what I'm going to do is just share the 3 trainings, that we are providing. And that will list what those formats are, and then you and I can talk a little bit about each training for sure. How does that sound?
Sounds awesome.
Okay, great. So the 3 format podcasts that can enhance your brand credibility for business as a beginner or professional are as follow. So we have a training that's called A Basic Introduction to Turning Your Medium Articles into a Profitable Podcast Empire, and it's a mini info training. And then we have another training is A Basic Introduction to Launching a Solo and Guest Featured Combo Podcast with Spotify for podcasters, and it is a mini info training. And then we have a training that's called A Basic Introduction to Co-hosting Style Podcasting, and it's a micro lesson. And so those are the 3 formats. There are multiple other formats, but these are the ones that we wanted to zero in on, especially for those who are in business and want to actually change some things up in terms of what they do, but at the same time help those who are just starting with this initiative to lay strong foundations, right, Brenda Lynn?
Yes, absolutely. And these, like I say, with the world changing as quickly as it is, these are things that maybe you haven't considered. Maybe you didn't think that you could do all three of these things within the same podcast, just different episodes and that sort of thing. So I think that this is a perfect time to introduce this to people.
Oh, I agree wholeheartedly. So before we actually jump in and start, sharing about a little bit about the trainings, I will just set the tone in terms of my own background. I won't get into too much around this, but in terms of my background with podcasting, I have over a decade of experience with podcasting, and prior to that, I do have a background in radio and television broadcasting. And something I want to speak to in terms of what Brenda Lynn said is that, no matter where you are and how much experience that you have in a certain area, because things are always shifting, especially in this rapid digital era, things are consistently changing. You really do have to stay, on top of your game and learn what it is that needs to be done during these times and what's going to best help you to navigate the seas of change and the winds of change, that happen in the online space. And so podcasting, though it's been around for quite some time, it's still very new to certain people in terms of them actually engaging that. And so, like for me, having a background in terms of, yes, over a decade in podcasting, and I've had multi-level versions of podcasting and have taught a variety of different formats to different people. But at the same time, I still like to come back to, I don't want to say the drawing board, but it's come back to as if it's a fresh, experience, for me as well. Now with Brenda Lynn, her background in terms of being in the podcast industry, she's got years skin in the game in terms of being someone who's been on podcast and being able to know how it is to be a great guest. And she has studied fundamentally, for sure, in terms of different levels of podcasts that she's participated, with. Yeah. I have done podcasts.
And from that, you kind of figure out what works and what doesn't work, what a good podcast feels like to participate in, what kind of traction it got out in the marketplace. There's a lot of learning involved in even just attending other, being a guest on others.
Absolutely. Gosh, I love that you said that. Because that's true. There's such tremendous, value there. And Brenda Lynn and I have done co-hosting of podcast series, together. But something that Brenda Lynn embarked on even more recently in terms of her own podcast, and she's gone through trainings, with me, and within some of the trainings you hear, about that, particularly the one around dual podcasting, solo and guest featured podcasting. And so she's been putting together her own podcasting platform according to her branding. And so it's exciting because she stepped into this new space for herself, and understanding that, yes, I've had a lot of experience in terms of being a guest on podcasts and being a part of different podcasts. And now she can look and see, yes, this is how I would want to set my podcast up based on the experience of, I know what works and won't work, for certain things. It helped her to lay even a better foundation, even from the training that she's gone through with me. Is that kind of correct, Brenda Lynn?
Yeah, it absolutely is. The other thing with me is from participating on so many summits and podcasts, and I've taught a lot online, and I've really gathered a big community of experts that I think have added tremendous value in things, and being able to bring them together. That was really my incentive for looking at doing my own podcast.
Right. And how it's so, tremendous, for business, for sure. And so I guess we'll jump in and we'll talk a little bit about the trainings, and there's going to be links in the description to these particular trainings that we're talking about. So the first one, as I mentioned, was a basic introduction to turning Medium articles into a profitable podcast empire. Now, some of you may not be on the platform Medium, But if you are a blogger and you know have your own blog, you can use this same concept to turn blog articles into podcast segments and let them be able to lead into some type of offer or opportunity that you have, whether it's a publication, you know, or a product. But in this particular training, we do recommend that you actually get on the platform Medium, because there's tremendous benefits to doing that, to being on that platform, and then being able to showcase the different articles, you know, that you provide on that platform. So Brenda, Lynn, you want to share anything like around, you know, that training that you think is a highlight, you know, for individuals?
I think that that it came out in that training, but I think that the one thing that you know, that you and I have talked about and that came out in that training is, if you're going to just be sharing your articles and reading your articles, I think it's just so critically important that you do it yourself, that you bring your energy into the reading of that article, rather than having an AI tool just read it from the
Yeah, right,
the
exactly.
and like I can tell when an AI is reading something, even as sophisticated as it's getting, and it kind of turns me off. I just as soon listen to and get the energy of the person who was passionate about the subject enough to write an article on it.
Right.
They know where things need to be emphasized, and you know how to how to read their own blog post with animation. And so I think that if I had one tip in all of that, I mean, we've talked about the technology and that's there, but as far as taking your actual blog post and just reading it out loud, more or less, makes a huge difference if you do it yourself with your own energy on it.
Absolutely. And so you would definitely say that that is a way to enhance brand credibility, especially, you know, for your business, right?
Yeah, because it's building that know, like, and trust factor. Like, they don't get to know you just because an AI tool is reading some words that you wrote down.
Right.
Because I mean, who knows? You could have used AI to write the article too.
Right.
So
And a lot of people are doing that, you know.
Absolutely. And it's getting more and more sophisticated. But if you can get a sense of the person and the passion that they have around the topic that they took time to write about, that I think that really adds massive credibility to your brand.
I do too. And thank you so much for saying that. That is tremendous. And the reason why that is, you know, very important is in terms of introducing this to those who maybe haven't considered this, is that it does provide some diversity for you on your platform too, and to be able to repurpose your content. And sometimes people run out of ideas even for podcasts, but when they can start to incorporate articles and blog posts and allow them to either be the inspiration for a podcast, or it is that it is kind of a read along, or you are being able to read from it, even if it's excerpts or so, maybe not always the full length article, just, you know, just depends, but you can do talking points, you know, from the article. I've even done this in products where even products that I have, I will actually read part of articles you know, that I have published, you know, in different places.
Absolutely, yeah.
Go ahead, Brenda, you were going to say something else?
I said absolutely. That's a great strategy to blend the two, your course and the article. And really, you know, when you write a blog post, it doesn't have to be a static tool, a one-dimensional tool.
Right.
It's the foundation for so much more. And even that topic will evolve. You know, your wisdom around the topic, your insights will evolve from the time you wrote that until, you know, the next day. There's probably been changes. So
right.
You know, so you can, in reading it yourself or taking talking points from it, you can then expand on the new information, the new dimensions that have come forth on that product since the time that you published the blog post.
Absolutely. And one thing we know about consistent, you know, brand building and having credibility, for your brand, it is an evolutionary process.
Oh,
It's
absolutely.
not ever a one and done type of experience where, okay, you shared this and it's just the one all be all. It's like, you are consistently building brand credibility. And when you actually do have content that you've put out there, and you can then be able to segue people, to that content or bring other elements out, it is tremendous, and it builds consistency that people can rely on and want to actually continue, to follow you with
Absolutely.
podcasts.
And the world is not static. Our world is anything but static right now. So
Right.
can't expect that our content, if we leave our content there to remain static, that it's going to actually be welcomed into a very dynamic world.
Right. It's up to you to enliven it, and to even take something that has been, let's say, published some time ago, and breathe new life into it for this era, for
Wow.
for what's taking place.
So and then 6 months from now, you can take that same topic, those same talking points, and produce something completely different from it.
Exactly.
Because of how everything has evolved. So that one blog post not remaining as a static tool can evolve and evolve and evolve, and that can serve you for years.
Years the gift that keeps on giving it.
Exactly.
Evergreen eternity, right? So within that training, individuals will start to learn how they can make that to be more profitable and do something, either is a one-off that consistently pays off, or to do it in a consistent way, with podcasting. So that's, again, one of the 3 podcast formats that you can use to start enhancing your brand credibility. So we're going to talk really quickly about the basic introduction to launching a solo and guest featured combo podcast, and actually using the platform Spotify for podcasters. And so, Brenda, Lynn, I mentioned that in terms of you starting to put together your own podcast, how this actually developed was in terms of the training that you listened to a masterclass of mine in terms of dual podcast empire building, profits, building. And then we started doing workspace sessions. And then that's how we went through your entire journey in terms of setting up your podcast. And even though I had named several different, platforms that could be, possibilities for podcasting, Spotify for podcasters was the one that you landed with and said, okay, that's the one that I want to do, which is the one I most prefer in terms of, and have done the most training around, I should say, in terms of the dual podcast, aspect. So so we can talk a little bit about that. I will link the playlist of your workspace sessions, and also the masterclass that you listen to, the mini masterclass. I'll have all of that, in the description. So let's talk a little bit about the launching a solo guest featured combo podcast. How do you believe that enhances brand credibility for business
done properly, which is again goes back to the elements of your course? I think that a lot of people I know have done a podcast that's strictly guest, like interview after interview after interview. They have lovely content, they have great experts coming on, but they get lost in the mix. They become the technical support, the host, and really going to look for what they can learn from that person. Just how do I get on her show so I can get exposure? So what I really like about the dual podcast is doing some of those solo presentations where you're showing up as the expert, and you are showcasing yourself and what your potential is. You can put your own courses and publications in the notes and doing those, and then adding an expert in once in a while. My idea when I'm starting out is I'll do 3 solos, because I've got a lot of content. I've taught a lot of courses over a lot of years, so I've got a lot of content to draw from. So
Mhm.
I can do like 3 that are various different aspects of my world, and then bring an expert on. Eventually I might work down to 2 and 2 in a month
Mhm.
and weekly. But the other thing that I really picked up from that course is to start out with your solo sessions. So
Yes.
start out showcasing yourself
Mhm.
before you bring an expert in. So you
Right.
build a very strong foundation,
Mhm.
who you are, what you have to offer the world, really building up your brand authority in the
Yes.
first, 5, 6 episodes that
Yes.
you're doing. And they live on that podcast. People will see you interviewing, they'll hear a comment that you make with a guest, and then they'll want to go back and see what else is on your podcast.
Mhm. Right.
So it's a good way to build
Yeah,
that.
I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. I agree wholeheartedly. Um, and so we'll move forward to talk about the other one, which you and I have done quite a bit in this particular area, as it relates to the co-hosting style, podcasting. And so let's talk a little bit about that because we've done collaborations, of course, and several co-hosting, and then we've got some other initiatives coming up, as well,
Yeah.
that are emerging. But since we're talking about brand credibility and for business, and again, this refers to anyone who is whether a beginner or someone who's even seasoned, if you're not leveraging some of these formats, and these don't have to be like on your platform that you're using now. It can be that you develop another platform for this, and there are easier ways to do that. And we actually talk
Yeah.
about that in the product. So Brenda, Lynn, you want to talk about how you think some doing collaborations or even doing co-hosting at times can work good for brand credibility building?
I think it's great. First off, you're now drawing from 2 different pools
Mhm.
of viewership. So
Yes.
you're getting exposed to the other hosts network, and they're getting exposed to yours, and it just really embellishes the whole concept of getting your message out to a wider and wider audience. So it's very good that way. The one caution that I would put
Mhm.
out there is to really know your co-host. If you're going to
Yes.
host, really understand and have a nice flow between you. And I can flow back and forth.
Yes.
We go, you say a bit, I say a bit. I've been on with co-hosts where I don't even have a chance to get a word in edgewise.
Mhm.
They take over, just occupying the chair sort of thing, face on the screen. So really understanding how to flip the mic back and forth,
Right.
and
Right.
really be able to bring, the full advantage of co-hosting is you get 2 different perspectives on things. You get 2 dimensions of whatever topic you're talking about, and
Right.
really being able to optimize that. In that is the art of having a successful co-hosting podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it does definitely help your brand credibility for sure, because it also shows in terms of even outside of just what we talked about before in terms of interviewing roles, when you can actually do collaborations with individuals and have,
Yeah.
conversations. It shows a different level of both your personal and professional branding, because people get to see a different side of your personality when you actually have to engage, with someone else.
Yeah.
So,
And the agility factor,
yeah, right.
you and I have experienced this in absolutely every co-training that we've done,
Mhm.
which has been numerous. I don't know,
Well, for
we're
sure. Yes,
up
yeah.
in the 70 different episodes or something that we've done together. And
And more than
um,
that. Yeah.
yeah, I think so. Like, I don't know, but I can't remember one of them that didn't take, where you didn't say something that took me off on a completely different tangent than
Yes,
I ever expected to bring into
right.
that training, and vice versa. And
Yes.
and so just it really builds that your agility to go with the flow,
Yes.
and to just allow this, to trust that there's a higher plan in place, and
Right.
allow this to kind of go in the direction that is of the most benefit to the audience, not
Right.
necessarily what we had in our minds when we started
Right,
out.
right.
And it just, and that's what I love about it, is I never know what's going to come out.
Right. And
I know that the general umbrella topic that we're going to talk about,
right. Yeah.
I have no idea nothing is, from that point on, nothing is pre-planned. So
No, right. It does take on, like I said, the different shape, and something I want to bring up in terms of, because we've done so many, co-hosting types of initiatives, even with products. And so this is something for those who have not embarked on this particular part of the initiative, something for them to consider is, especially if you haven't started a podcast at all, is that sometimes maybe it will be good to actually be a co-host with someone and also do some building up so that you can eventually possibly launch your own podcast if that's something you're interested in. So just like how Brenda Lynn has a lot of background as it relates to understanding podcasts, being engaged with podcasts, because she's been a part of being interviewed and being the interviewee even on other people's platforms and different things. So she's done a lot. And then we've done co-hosting collaborations. But then now, again, her actually doing her own podcast, she comes to the table with a lot of knowledge and a lot of background. And because she's done countless trainings, as she mentioned, then it's an easier flow to start sharing on a podcast platform to expand the brand.
I don't feel like a newbie.
Exactly.
Even though I've never had my own podcast, I'm not coming into it with that nervousness of, oh, how's this going to go? What am I going to do? It's basically
right.
Hit the record button and off you go.
And off you go. That's right.
Same. Whether I'm teaching a course or hopping on a co-training with you or a podcast with you or with somebody else, it's all the same. And I feel like a seasoned professional in this realm, even though I've never actually hosted my own solo podcast.
Right. And so that's something, I'm glad you said that, because that's something for others to consider too, is that you actually have the background and skill for this already. It's just a matter of now getting in there and doing it. And again, laying a foundation correctly, which we go over within the trainings, various, levels of how this really takes you to the next level. And can you do all of this in just a one podcast platform format? Absolutely. You can definitely mix it up where you can do your article reading for sure. You can definitely have it to where you have your solo segments, and then sometimes you bring in guests, and then maybe you have a season that you bring in a co-host. So that co-host may not be on your platform all the time. It may be that during a certain season or, certain
10 episodes of.
Exactly. Right. Yeah.
I like the idea of doing this all on the same podcast platform. For me, then I'm only managing one channel, one tool, and that makes it much easier for me. But also, I think that people are looking for that variety. Many people don't just want to see me talking once a week forever. It actually adds.
I do. No, I'm just kidding.
Thank you. If they do, they can take my courses. I talk
right.
Courses. But just bringing in different dimensions and different energy into that platform. So now they're anxious to come back and see who's going to show up or what the topic's going to be, or is it going to be co-hosted? It's just bringing that variety in so people don't get kind of stuck in a rut with your podcast, and eventually they'll go look for something else.
Right. You're absolutely right. All right. Well, Brenda Lynn, I think, we've done our due diligence here to bring forth, 3 podcast formats that can enhance and, brand credibility, for sure, as it relates to those, who are entrepreneurs, those who are in business, and again, for beginners or, professionals. So the trainings are going to be in the description as mentioned, and also the playlist of Brenda Lynn's workspace sessions, and also the training, the mini masterclass that I provided. All of that's going to be in the description, and also how you can learn about myself and Brenda Lynn and different works that we do. Also, we want to extend an invitation in terms of, reach out if there's something else that you need or questions that you have. The products are going to, help you tremendously, but sometimes people want to take things to the next level. So we're letting you know that, we do have the next steps available, whether it is in other products and resources. And I've got over like 70 podcast products, but
Yeah.
to do something even from, a hands-on perspective or so, if you need
More interactive.
There you go, more interactive.
More interactive training. I love
Go ahead.
those. I love the interactive trainings because once again, the questions that people come out with takes it to a different dimension that I hadn't necessarily anticipated. So
Right. And we want to open up that space, for that too, so that as you grow and evolve, we continue to grow and evolve too. No matter what we know, there's always room for expansion. For sure. Yeah. Okay.
So
Well,
thank you for hosting this session. I think it was very informative for people. And I look forward to the next one.
well, thank you. And everything you shared was, tremendous. I'm excited, for those who are going to partake of those trainings, that we, have provided. I know that they will benefit, tremendously for this, from this experience. So Brenda Lynn, thank you again, of course. And
Very welcome.
yeah, so we are going to close, this kind of preview, if you want to say preview of those products and this info session out. And again, look in the description so that you can learn more about us. And again, the different offerings that we provide. And we look forward to being back with you soon to provide more awareness around podcast and production building, and wishing you the absolute best. Take care.